In a dystopian future, less than 100 years from now, Earth is no longer habitable for humans. An organization named as the Global Space Administration, or GSA, is established to build a series of spaceships that will transport surviving humans to new planets. In the year 2119 AD, GSA's first spaceship, the Ark One, is launched from Earth for a new settlement on the planet Proxima b. It carries 400 people including crew members as well as normal civilians. They are placed in artificial sleep inside specially designed pods which are divided into two groups. The first group, Sleeper Pod Bay 1, contains the command staff, top engineers, scientists, architects, and teachers. Low-ranking officers, specialists, and civilians are in the second group, Sleeper Pod Bay 2. In the year 2124 AD, 5 years and 92 days after launch, a catastrophe strikes, causing severe damage to the Ark One. Sleeper Pod Bay 1 is completely destroyed, with the loss of all crew inside. The occupants of Sleeper Pod Bay 2 are revived by a lower-ranking official, Lieutenant Sharon Garnett. Thankfully, many manage to escape before the Bay 2 is also destroyed. Out of the 400 crew, only 150 survive. In the wake of this emergency, the awakened crew begin to assess the situation. There are people of various specialties among the survivors, but none of them know the full scale of the damage to the ship and crew. They are soon ordered to convene in the mess hall which lies in the sea deck of the ship. Shortly afterwards, the three lieutenants, Sharon, Spencer Lane, and James Bryce, address the people left in the Ark One. Spencer announces they still have 1 year to go before reaching Proxima b, much to the crew's horror. He also gives them a rundown of all the damages done by the unexplained catastrophe. Their sleeper pods are destroyed, their storage unit is lost, and their water supply is extremely limited. Sharon says they'll repurpose their water recycling unit, but until then, they must follow tight rations. She also adds that they lost most of their food supply and only have enough for 6 weeks. On top of this, all of their senior commanders are now dead and the 3 lieutenants are the highest-ranking officers left. Sharon then boldly appoints herself as their leader, which the 2 male lieutenants question. But she has the most experience and knowledge about the ship, making her the most capable candidate. Spencer in particular is visibly unhappy about this decision. Nonetheless, Sharon delivers a rousing speech to raise the crew's morale about how they were all chosen to save mankind. The following day, the survivors gather to hold a funeral service for their fallen commanders. The chief of life support on Ark One, Jasper Dades, slides nearby a low-ranking military officer, Baylor Trent. He maliciously asks Baylor about his romantic relationship with the ship's late commanding officer, Susan Ingram. This seemingly personal information angers Baylor. After the funeral, the crew heads to the mess hall for breakfast. Jasper receives his meal, which is a sad-looking blob of jelly. The kitchen staff explains that everyone will only receive 500-calorie meals twice a day to save rations. Meanwhile, horticulture expert Angus Medford leads Sharon into the storage bay. He shows her a container full of modified fertile soil that he smuggled from Earth. This gives them the ability to grow crops almost anywhere, but he'll require power for the agricultural LED lights. As the ship's acting commanding officer, Sharon gives him the permission to use the resources and create a bio-farm. Concurrently, psychologist Kat Brandes sneaks into the women's locker room to shower. She is caught by the head of security, Felix Strickland, in the act. Kat tries to beguile him, but he stops her and hands her a towel. Later, Alicia rushes to the storage unit and finds Angus setting up his bio-farm. She asks him if there is anything she can do to help. Angus realizes that she works in the waste management system and asks her for the necessary ingredients for fertilizer. Elsewhere, Baylor is watching an old video message from his family when Lieutenant Spencer walks in on him. Baylor then asks the senior officer if he regrets volunteering for the mission. The lieutenant replies that he doesn't because people back on Earth depend on them. While they are having a conversation, the lights suddenly shut down. Spencer inquires about the power outage, and one crew member informs him that Lieutenant Sharon has been rerouting the power to a biofarm. Following this, Spencer storms into the storage bay where the work for the biofarm is currently in progress. He confronts Sharon for failing to consult her fellow lieutenants before approving this risky project. Sharon apologizes but reprimands him for confronting her publicly. Shortly afterwards, a voting session is called between the highest-ranking specialists in the ship. Sharon, James, and 3 others vote for farming since it helps mitigate their food crisis. Spencer, on the other hand, argues they're wasting too many resources on it. However, Sharon explains that everything they do from now on entails risk, and that they need to make tough choices to survive. Afterward, Sharon heads back to the storage unit, and she encourages Angus to continue the biofarm. Chief of Maintenance, Eva Markovic, goes down to the engineering unit where she meets her deputy, Harris Beckner. She tells him that they must rebuild the water recycling unit as soon as possible. Right at that moment, an alarm blares, stating that the oxygen on the ship has been depleted. Dr. Sanjeevani hands him an oxygen mask while she leaves to grab their specialized helmets. All crew members across the ship also activate their pressurized suits and rush for their helmets. Unfortunately, Eva is separated from her engineering team as a door closes between them. The same thing happens to Baylor and Dr. Sanjeevani on the medical bay. Sharon is informed that the ship is in automatic lockdown due to the oxygen levels falling to 15% across the ship. However, James is unable to clear the diagnostics screens to give him a reading on where the oxygen leak is. Sharon then orders the Chief of Life Support, Jasper Dades, to report to the Central Communication Office, or CENTCOM. She also instructs Spencer to lead a team on a physical search for the cause of the problem. Moments later, Felix finds Jasper, who seems to be hiding from the crew for some reason. Felix lies about a communications problems in his helmet and takes Dades to CENTCOM. At the engineering unit, Eva is separated from her crew by a door in a corridor. Everyone has a helmet, but she tells her deputy, Harris Beckner, that the helmets in their section do not have oxygen due to low charge. She urges the rest of her crew to override the door and open it as soon as possible. In medical bay, Baylor is locked inside without a helmet, forcing him to improvise with an oxygen tank and breathing mask. He also manages to override the door and eventually opens it. He then takes several oxygen tanks and hides them in an access hatch in the corridor. In the meantime, Jasper is brought to CENTCOM and told to clear the lockdown. He looks at the problem for a few minutes and then makes a shocking confession. He is not Jasper Dades at all. He is an imposter named Malcolm Perry who stole Jasper's identity. He has no idea how to fix the life support problem. Infuriated, Felix arrests him, and Sharon orders him to find anyone on the crew with life support training. Soon enough, 3 candidates are found who may be able to solve the life support problem. One of them is Alicia, who immediately recognizes that the computer is stuck in a loop. She fixes the issue, allowing the life support system to reboot and diagnose the problem. Sharon then relays the information to Spencer, who goes on a spacewalk to seal the leak from outside. After a while, the oxygen levels are restored and the lockdown is lifted. Lieutenant James promotes Alicia to Chief of Life Support on the spot. In the aftermath of this event, Sharon confronts Malcolm Perry, who is being held captive in a storage locker. Turns out, he paid a hacker to fake records that deployed the real Jasper Dades to the second ship, Ark 2. Malcolm then impersonated him to take his spot in the Ark One. An enraged Sharon tells him that she will recommend to the Representative Council that he receive the death penalty, but Malcolm makes a rather surprising remark. He reveals that there are other imposters on the ship. When she is about to walk away, he makes mention of a cadet named Denise that he met in a bar in Jacksonville, Florida. Sharon seems to recognize who he is talking about and walks away. At the meeting of the Representative Council, Dr. Sanjeevani suggests that Malcolm should be allowed to speak for himself before judgment is passed. Felix is then sent to bring him before the council. However, when Felix opens the door to the storage locker, he finds that Malcolm's throat has been cut. The following day, LT, Spencer Lane, LT, James Bryce and a few others take a spacewalk outside Ark One to survey the damage from whatever struck them. LT, Sharon Garnett observes them intently while inside the ship. Things quickly go south as some debris knocks Spencer unconscious, while another fragment from the vessel hits him and then impales James' surveying partner. Soon afterwards, James brings Spencer in after the incident. He looks remorseful and internally blames himself for all the loss of his surveying partner's life. Later, Dr. Sanjeevani Kabir tends to Lane's head wound and concludes that he has a concussion. Alicia also soon arrives for her checkup. One crew member, who's waiting to be seen by Dr. Sanjeevani along with a slew of other patients, criticizes Alicia regarding her promotion as the new Chief of Life Support. Rumor has it Alicia killed Jasper Dades to take his place. After the crew member backs off, Alicia hashes out these rumors with the doctor, but the doctor looks incredibly tired and yells at Alicia to shut up. She then admits to Spencer that she hasn't slept since they awoke from the cryogenic pods. She's the only doctor to survive the event. Spencer suggests her to lock the doors to the medbay and get some much-needed shut-eye. Next, Spencer departs the medbay and soon James catches up to him and asks how he's feeling. They reminisce about the crew member they lost while outside the ship. Apparently, James set this guy up with his wife after he had dated her first. Meanwhile, Alicia meets Baylor, who took her former position in waste management. It is obvious that there is a chemistry between them as they flirt. While chatting, Baylor wants Alicia to show him the ins and outs of waste management if she's not too busy with her work. Then, a funeral service is held for the crew who lost their lives during the oxygen crisis. The plan is to send the bodies through the airlock and into space. Eva, who is present in the service, spits on Malcolm Perry's body, which catches the eye of Felix. Later, Angus approaches the representative council and asks if the remains can be used for fertilizer. He argues that composting the bodies helps keep all of them alive, but Sharon declines his request. When Alicia throws her support behind Angus, Spencer questions why Alicia is even at the council. That's when he learns about James promoting Alicia after the oxygen crisis. Sharon then reminds Lane that no unilateral decisions must be made aboard this ship. Everyone on the commanding side must decide matters as one cohesive body. So, Sharon asks the council to vote on the decision to compost the bodies. Spencer is outvoted once more, so he storms out in anger. James chases after him and Spencer questions why she is the one taking charge. He argues that she never trained with them and they know nothing about her. In fact, Sharon joined the crew mere days before Ark One began its voyage. Next, in a flashback to a few days before the launch, LT, CMDR, Susan Ingram introduces the crew to a hologram of the man who designed the Ark program, William Trust. He wishes the team well and laments not being with them. However, he's designing 20 more ships to transport humanity to a new planet. James, who's standing next to Spencer and Baylor, doesn't believe they should be listening to William Trust. He thinks Trust is a man with a god complex and was previously fired from his job. Psychologist Kat, who is also an influencer, talks with the press in front of a huge number of cameras. It is here that Ingram introduces Spencer, James, and Baylor to Sharon, a last-minute addition to their trip. After Sharon departs, Ingram claims a higher-up implemented the decision to incorporate her. Back in the present, James and Spencer head into the same room to sleep. The latter wonders why James is sitting on his bed. Apparently, Sharon claimed the captain's quarters, and only 2 crew chambers exist. Meanwhile, Felix catches Sharon trying to access the keypad by the storage closet, where Malcolm died. She tells Felix that someone erased the logs so they can't see who accessed them to murder Malcolm. The head of security reminds the lieutenant he's conducting a murder investigation, and everyone's a suspect as of now. Then, Angus notices a pipe burst in the storage bay. The ship needs that water for the soil, and the produce it yields. He contains the burst and informs Sharon about it. Unfortunately, she points out that's precious drinking water the ship has lost. She then tries to contact Eva to help them recover that water. When the latter doesn't respond, Sharon goes to look for her, and finds her weeping on her bed. It is revealed that she's grieving the loss of Williams, a crew member who died during the oxygen shortage. In the meantime, Spencer and James examine the camera footage from the event that jolted them from their cryosleep. The cameras shut down temporarily when said event transpired, so they have nothing to study. Felix questions Spencer about where he was when Malcolm was murdered, but the lieutenant's superiority complex rears its ugly head. He believes his outranking Felix means he doesn't have to answer the latter's questions. Elsewhere, Alicia assists Angus in the storage bay, where he finds a knife with a curved blade in the wet soil. He concludes that it must be the knife that punctured the pipe. Meanwhile, Eva orders her crew to reclaim that water, pushing past her grief to get things done. Sharon also urges James and Spencer to refrain from taking another trip outside to survey the damage from the impact. Later, Angus sits with Felix in the mess hall and shows him the knife he found. He asks the head of security if it was the murder weapon. Felix confirms this, but before the pair can discuss it further, a few unhappy crew members steal Angus's water and threaten him. Felix steps in, and a fight ensues. Sharon also gets involved, and ultimately knocks down the bullies. Once the assailants are subdued, the 3 lieutenants determine how to punish them as they have no means of imprisoning them. Sharon believes their anger is merely a symptom, and they must address the root cause. She tracks down Kat and promotes her to head of shipwide mental health, and orders her to be the resident therapist for Ark One. But Kat reveals she doled out relationship advice and is not qualified to be a therapist. However, she does as she's told. James and Spencer disregard Garnet's warning and resume their mission outside the ship. This time, James goes alone and discovers a diamond-like substance in the gape left from the impact. When he touches it, it instantly dissolves in his hand and eats away at his glove, exposing his fingertips to the spatial elements. He hurries back inside, and once Spencer pressurizes the cabin, he removes what's left of his glove. Thankfully, Dr. Sanjivni fixes up his hand and assures the lieutenant the skin will grow back. However, this news reaches Sharon's ears, who storms into the med bay and chastises both men for disregarding her warning. The trio agrees to set aside sleeping time for at least one shift, designating 5 hours to get the necessary rest. Later, James and Spencer head into their room to find Kat making herself at home. Much to their dismay, Sharon promised Kat could use that room for her therapy sessions, but she's more than happy to tend to their needs simultaneously. Thus, the boys see to their last-minute sleeping arrangements. Sharon, on the other hand, lies in bed and stares at a picture of her and a mystery man. Suddenly, Eva calls the council together for an emergency meeting. A few days later, LT, Sharon Garnet delivers a message to the ship. She tells the crew about the water shortage and how Ark One only has 4 days left of water. Thus, she reveals each person's daily water rations will be cut in half. LT, Spencer Lane believes they should have kept that information to themselves instead of stoking the fires of fear shipwide. However, Sharon asserts transparency is the best route. The duo then proceed to argue over whether the folks on this ship are now soldiers in this post-hibernation world. LT, James Bryce urges his fellow lieutenants to cease arguing and focus on solving the water crisis. Spencer suggests deploying the solar sails, but Eva reveals they must be closer to a star for that to work. Alicia states that William Trust's design is advanced, but can't account for their current situation. Suddenly, the alarms blare and James spots an incoming asteroid that's in their flight path. They'll soon collide with it if they can't steer clear of the massive cosmic body. The crew immediately get into calculations and conclude that the asteroid will arrive in 6 hours. Next, Felix waltzes into the commanding bridge to confront Spence as they never finished their conversation about the murder investigation. Felix asks how he knew about the location of the murder weapon, and Spencer claims Angus won't keep quiet about it. Sharon steps in, defending her fellow lieutenant, and reminds Felix that they have bigger fish to fry. Meanwhile, Dr. Sanjivani Kabir browses sleepily through medical records of the crew. She lands on James' files and begins examining them when a loud noise interrupts said examination. The doctor then notices her cabinets are bereft of potent medication. She concludes that somebody stole them from the med bay. Elsewhere, Alicia tries to lend a hand to the engineering team while Eva buzzes around consoles and tinkers with buttons. Sharon wants Eva to jumpstart the engines to speed away from the asteroid. Unfortunately, this endeavor backfires tremendously when the engines refuse to start. Then, Felix investigates the medication theft in the med bay. The doctor emphasizes the importance of finding those drugs because they can be deadly. After her chat with Felix, Sanjivani tracks down James to ask if he can stop by the med bay for a physical. She claims his file was destroyed, and she must recreate a new one for her records. He promises to visit her after the current crisis passes. Next, Baylor comforts Alicia, who begins spiraling about the impending asteroid collision. He encourages Alicia to help find a solution instead of falling into depression. Emboldened by purpose, Alicia gets to work with renewed vigor. Later, Angus gives the team an idea worth implementing. James can fly the shuttle and literally push the ship off its current course. He names it the Get Out and Push method. Soon enough, James sits inside said shuttle and attempts to start it, but to no avail. It is then revealed that Angus and Eva's team stole parts from the shuttle to keep other aspects of Ark One in tip-top shape. Sharon, who comes to know this, orders them to return those parts to get the shuttle running. While James runs repairs on his shuttle, Sharon, Spencer, and the others brainstorm another plan. Spencer wonders what would transpire if they blew a hole in the hull via the men's bathroom. He argues that the air pressure might give them the push they need to change course. Angus knows how to make explosives, too, as he has got fertilizer and human remains to do so. On the other hand, James tries multiple times to jumpstart the shuttle but fails to do so. Meanwhile, Shaorn, Spencer, and Eva find the crew members who stole the medbay drugs. Sharon orders the group, who's currently hard at work partying, to hand over the meds and clean up their mess. One of those claims he won't listen to her and questions her authority. Thus, Sharon slams him against the lockers and threatens to toss everyone present out of the airlock if they don't do as they're bid. Naturally, the group hightails it out of there, leaving behind the drugs. Next, Angus sticks his fertilizer plus dead body explosive on the wall of the men's bathroom. Spencer then detonates it, and while the hull maintains its integrity, there's no telling whether the explosive helped shift their course. Soon afterwards, Angus reveals the explosive brought them off their current course. James also excitedly barges into the commanding bridge, declaring he has finally fixed the shuttle. However, Angus had already saved the day, so he appears to have repaired the shuttle for nothing. Later, Alicia watches the asteroid pass the ship alongside Baylor and the crew. A light bulb switches on in her head when she spots an inexplicable tail on the asteroid. She informs Bryce that it is not an asteroid but a comet, and comets can be mined for water. Eva suggests they attach a hose to the comet that can suck up the water they'll need to replenish their stores. Thus, James heads back to the shuttle, but Eva stops him in the corridor. She rattles off a list of tasks he should have accomplished before embarking on this mission. James confirms he did everything correctly despite not being an engineer. He then playfully asks if Eva's worried about him. Meanwhile, Alicia opts not to stay on the bridge while James takes the shuttle onto the comet. Baylor asks her how James can park himself onto a moving comet. He also informs Alicia and Angus about James' reputation of being a gifted pilot in the GSA. Moments later, the crew tethers the shuttle to the ship before James lands it on the comet. It's a shaky, turbulent, riddled drop, but James eventually hits the comet's surface. He then deploys a drill that burrows into the comet, and Eva monitors how much water flows from the comet and into the ship's tanks. Suddenly, Sharon and Spencer notice the tether keeping the shuttle attached to Ark One begin to snap. When James landed on the comet, he shifted the main vessel's course ever so slightly, but it was enough to apply immense pressure on the tether as Ark One tries to veer away from it. So, Sharon and Spencer order James to return to the ship as it's not worth risking his life. However, the latter refuses to budge, claiming the tether will hold even though we see it straining under pressure. Eva notices the stores are at 97%. However, James insists it's not good enough. When their water storage is at 100%, he finally departs. When James returns to the ship, the crew greets him with glasses of ice-cold Comet water. The two lieutenants embrace him and James gratefully guzzles the water. Spencer then announces the water restrictions are lifted, so showers are on the table. For some reason, Eva's face falls, and she flees the celebrations. Meanwhile, Kat gleefully hits the showers in the women's bathroom along with a few other ladies. James barges in despite knowing it's the wrong restroom, and informs those present that the men's bathroom is out of order. Kat then sneaks a peek at Bryce as he takes the shower stall next to her. Later on, Kat hears crying and realizes it's Eva. She finishes her shower and pulls Eva aside for a quick therapy session. Elsewhere, Felix returns most of the drugs to the medbay and offers his assistance to Dr. Sanjivni so that she can rest. She gladly accepts his offer, and after he leaves, she slips a pill in her mouth. Next, Kat chats with Eva in their quarters where Kat takes off her wig and shows off her primarily bald head. She discloses her experience with a UV storm resulting in her hair loss. Eva then shares that she lost her brother in a UV storm. The psychologist finally understands the problem and tells Eva that she's suffering from survivor's guilt. A part of Eva feels she shouldn't celebrate when Harris and the others are dead. The pair dives into Eva and Harris's relationship. It is revealed that there was a rule about couples not being allowed to board the same Ark together. Kat surmises it was because of genetic diversity regarding procreation. When they arrive on Proxima B, Eva then delves into her feelings about Malcolm and why she spat on his corpse. According to her, Malcolm deserved to have his throat slit. Meanwhile, Sharon apologizes to Spencer and vows to listen to him more. The latter is taken aback but glad they're on the same page now. After they part ways temporarily, Spencer receives a confidential notification from an unknown person on his watch. They claim Jasper, aka Malcolm, hid valuables that Spencer should see. Following this, Spencer ventures to Malcolm's bunk and plays the video footage from the Florida pub. He sees what appears to be Sharon in a bar fight. In it, she slits someone's throat with a blade that's awfully similar to what killed Malcolm. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.